Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Eternal Card Breakdown. My name is Pojo. We are live and we are ready to rock and roll, talking about the two new promo cards that came out this week. There were 4 cards scheduled to come out this week. Instead of 4 cards, we're getting 5 because 2 different promos have been released. No One to Hold Them and Just Desserts this week. So, as always, you can get copies of these cards for free for the next week just by playing them. They're craftable for a certain amount. I can't remember exactly how much, but let me just check. Yeah, 600 afterwards, so you should be able to get these pretty easily if you're looking for other stuff. We've got Know When to Hold Them first. We're going to talk a little bit about this card. Primal, single Primal, for draw a card of your choice from your deck. It can't be played for 5 turns. So, notably, if you get this card in your opening hand, this allows you to pick up a combo piece that is fairly important for later without actually, imposing a lot of difficulty on your mana base or any of the other cards that you need to play for that combo. I think probably the most interesting option for it would be something along the lines of the current Curtain Call combo, where if you're playing blue, yellow, and purple, you can play Curtain Call, you can play a Yeti Instigator, I believe it's called. It's a 2/1, and then you make the card invulnerable to damage, play Stained Honor down, the Instigator gets invulnerable to damage, or not invulnerable to damage, can't die, and then you twist it over and over and over again and it kills your opponent. So this is a pretty solid way to basically assemble a combo early in the game, basically by having 8 extra copies of that particular card in your hand. As another option, this can be played in heavy card draw decks to pick out cards that are your big finishers or that are particular cards that you need, and then basically just sit on them for a while and wait for them to be played. It doesn't put the restriction on every card of that type, so picking something up like a big 8/8 giant still means you can play 8/8 giants that you draw from your deck or something along those lines. So even if you have 4 copies of a card, it's not going to completely stop your ability to play those cards. That being said, this is a pretty consistent option for assembling combos. The cost of it is clearly pretty obvious. It is very, very hard if you play the card in the late game or the mid game, and you need to survive for 5 whole turns to play a card that you have spent a little bit of time assembling and that your opponent knows that you have in hand. This is pretty easy to get discarded with any sort of discard-based effect. If your opponent has a choose discard, they can wait for 4 turns, then they can choose to discard your card immediately and just basically make it so that you can't get that card that you wanted to play. There's a lot of vulnerability that is imposed as playing this card happens, and that can be a little bit tricky. Darkest Tempest is pointing out that this card fetches Maul if you are playing in a Primal deck that's playing a lot of spells and trying to basically get a bunch of card draw out. You can then use Maul to finish people off, so it's a reasonable option in that respect. Basically, anytime that you need a particular card, but you're willing to pay the price of both letting your opponent know that you have it and waiting for a really long time, 5 whole turns in fact, to play it, Know When to Hold Them makes sense as an option. I don't think it's a terribly powerful card. However, as a 1-cost tutor, there is always reason to be suspicious. In Throne in particular, tutors are just going to grow more and more powerful as the power level of cards increases. When you have an unlimited pool of cards, the better your tutor and the cheaper your tutor, the more interesting it happens to be. Still, 5 turns is so much in a high power level format that I kind of feel like Know When to Hold Them won't really see a lot of play there, except in very specific combo decks, and it won't necessarily make them all that much better. It's very interesting. I think it's pretty intelligently designed for a tutor. I also think that it has the potential to be a really dangerous card, and I think that's going to attract a wide variety of spikes who have, or even Johnnies who have really interesting combo ideas and want to make a deck that is not just extremely inventive, but also very broken. Whether or not they will succeed, I think, is sort of a testament to whether or not the designers put the appropriate restrictions on this card. And as far as I can tell, yeah, it's just fine. So the art on this card, some people have asked if this is Roland. It's not. It's just a random dude. He doesn't look anything like Roland, really. He's got kind of a red nose and a flat face. Roland is sort of a similar hairstyle and is like an Argenport soldier, which this character also appears to be. But I think this is just a random mook, and that's pretty relevant since we also see the random mook dying in a particularly in the next card, actually, because this is a 2-part card where a story is being told from one to the other. together. You'll notice that this person is playing cards in a tavern, a very Eternal feel. Eternal has a lot of like gunslingers and frontiersmen, and just sort of this general like time period that it's trying to evoke with green and red in particular. And Primal usually doesn't have this type of card, but since this card is going to transition into a Justice card, we're then going to see sort of the conclusion here. So this person, knowing when to hold them, followed by just desserts. And as we can see, things have not gone too well for this character. They're frothing at the mouth, they've been poisoned, they have lipstick smears on their face, so we can guess where they've been poisoned from. Just desserts. 2 cost. When an enemy unit of your choice would deal damage this turn, it deals that damage to itself instead. Fast spell. This one's not terribly exciting, but it is good removal for Justice. It basically says that if you have any card that has higher damage than it has health, anything that's like, or even equal damage to health, then this card is able to kill them, which makes it effectively a fast speed vanquish, which is pretty exciting if you're looking for a really damaging card that can actually like basically prevent other things from harming you. On the other hand, the card does not select anything that isn't going to attack. It doesn't select cards with less strength than health, which is traditionally a little bit more of a problem for Justice decks since they already have access to a wide variety of vanquish effects. And it also makes it so the unit basically has to attack and deal damage to sort of get that happening. You can actually get it to work if you are attacking into the unit, so you can basically like force a block and then use Just Desserts to have it deal that damage to itself instead, which is pretty excellent if you're playing in a trade situation, since that means that you can kill a lot of units that actually have less health than strength, which does make the card a lot more flexible and a lot more powerful than other types of cards of that type. So it's definitely a card to watch out for. I think it's one of the stronger pieces of Justice removal in Expedition, and it's potentially strong enough for Throne just because it's very, very quick. It does a lot of the same things that Vanquish does, and people are still running Vanquish, and also it allows you to attack into profitable trades and maybe do some other good stuff against very big units, which I think can be really pretty interesting and beneficial. The cards that this doesn't work on aren't necessarily readily apparent. Obviously, like a 0-6 or a 0-4 is not going to die to Just Desserts even if you attack into it and trade with it, but like there's definitely a question of what you have on board as to whether or not that's going to help you in terms of causing your opponent's stuff to implode, and whether or not you can block with those things or attack with those things and force a block really determines whether or not Just Desserts is good against any of the units that have less strength than health. With units that have more strength than health, it's pretty easy to do, so not too hard to trigger, and it's a solid combat trick in general. In draft this would be absolutely disgusting, but it's not in draft. It's in specifically Expedition and Throne, and I think it definitely has a place in Expedition as premier removal for that particular setup. In Throne, I think it's a little bit conditional, so it may not really see a lot of play just because Throne is, again, a very high power format with a lot of extremely powerful cards. The question here is, does it block hit the enemy player effects and infiltrate? The answer is yes. If you reduce a unit's attack to 0 or prevent it from dealing damage, that prevents infiltrate, and that also prevents hits the enemy player. It does not prevent onslaught effects, however, so there are still things that you can get out of attacking into a Just Desserts, which is pretty strong stuff. So yeah, a nice flavorful twofer this time around. We got a pretty good Primal tutor card that's a little bit dangerous and potentially a really interesting Throne combo option, and we got a very powerful Expedition removal spell that I think should be very, very strong in Justice and give Justice a lot of like... I think the thing that's really nice about this design is that it requires interaction to function while still being very good against a wide variety of units, meaning that it's a pretty interesting card to play. It creates a lot of decision points while also being very powerful. That's generally like really strong design, and I like that a lot about the card. The one thing about it that's like maybe a little bit tricky, I didn't even notice that the lady in the first image is actually in the background showing what's happened. Yeah, okay, so the one thing I probably don't like about it is that the art doesn't quite fit the color of the card very much. It's a poisonous card, which is a little bit strange, but like it is cool to see like these 1-2 stories. It's always nice when you can see like the art of one card matching up to another, or like characters that are sort of like continuing through card sets, and I think that that's like just a nice piece of design in general. Whenever we see it in Eternal, I'm always happy to see it. Good examples include the Caldarian Cradle with its dragon that comes out of it, and you can see the cradle from a different angle. All of the Marason's Disciple cards leading up to Ravid Insect Master. There's a lot of like really nice designs like that, and it's just a good use of the art team and a good way to like sort of provide some storyline and provide some like real character feel for the game. So as a result, it makes a very good promo card. I think this is a solid way to introduce cards. I'm liking the weekly format of cards in general. It does mean you have to play pretty consistently to get all of the cards that you want, but I also think that it's a lot of free stuff and a lot of potential power for new players to explore, which is really, really good because we want Eternal to be a generous game for new players, and we want to see like a lot of like good stuff happening with that. And I think Eternal is a very generous game for new players. I think this is another good way to sort of give players tools to deal with people who have been in the game for longer, and I'm really, really into these two cards, particularly Just Desserts. I really like the design of that one. That's it for this card breakdown. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. We're on YouTube, Patreon, Twitch, and Twitter. As always, you can sub to us here, or you can sub to us on Twitch with Amazon Prime, which will give us a free sub for like $2.50 if you have Amazon Prime. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and to the YouTube folks, thanks again. We'll see y'all later. To Twitch folks, let's play a few more games. Cheers.